Hi everyone, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I'm planting my warm season vegetables, and I thought you might like to come along and see how I do it. So follow me and let's get started. So this is where I'm going to do my planting. Earlier today I just took some old pots again that I had gotten from the garden center with other plants in them last season, or maybe even 2 seasons ago, who knows. I prepared them by having them in a mild bleach solution for about 10 minutes earlier today. And then I rinsed them out and dried them real well. Then I put a nice loose seed starting mix. It's very nice and loose. It's mostly peat moss, a little bit of perlite. And that just will be nice and easy for the seeds to get settled in but still push through the soil when they're ready to come out. So I took the time and I put some tags in the pots, and I just marked each row pretty much for what I want to put in it. So as you can see, I'm going to have 3 types of peppers. I have some bell peppers, some banana peppers, some jalapeno peppers. I have Roma tomatoes and a cherry mix of tiny tomatoes and some tiny Tim baby tomatoes and some Manitoba tomatoes. These are my favorite, the Manitoba tomatoes. I always make sure I plant some of those every year. And then I also have 2 kinds of eggplant. Now I usually plant the Black Beauty, and last year for some reason I just couldn't find it, so I planted these ones. And I have to say they didn't produce as well for me, but we had kind of a funny year last year. It was really hot and dry. I had a lot of trouble keeping things watered nicely in the garden. So I'm going to try a few again just to see if it was the season or the variety, or try and determine what the problem was last year anyways. I like a challenge. So once we get the seeds in there and covered up, I'm going to take them over here, and I just have a stand where I put the plants I'm starting for the season, and I've set a heat mat here. You can buy these at your garden center or hardware store usually, and it just helps to put some heat on the bottom of the plants, because these veggies that we're starting today really like to have a nice warm place to start. And I'll also put a dome over top the tray just to hold some of the heat and humidity in. I'll have to watch that to make sure they don't get too humid. Might have to vent it, but that just helps to get them started. And I also have a light above it. The light's not on right now. Try and keep some of the funny colors down because that's blue and red LEDs, but we'll get that turned on once they get going and give them a good start to the season indoors. So these vegetables are actually, I find, fairly easy to grow. So all you do is you get the seeds, and this is the Manitoba tomato seeds right here. And I just take a few on my hand like that. And I usually just put about 3 or so, and I just kind of sprinkle them around in there just to get a few in the pot, because you know you're never going to get them all germinating at once, or I shouldn't say never, but rarely. And then they like to be about 1/4 of an inch deep, so I just take a little sprinkling of the soil, give it a pat down, and that's all you really need to do. So you just stick a couple in there, a couple in there, a couple in there, and as you can see, I'm not too fussy about it. A little bit of soil on top. A lot of times people worry about, getting it all exact, but I find, as long as you're not doing it really to any extremes, as long as you're following the basic directions, keeping them warm enough and keeping them moist enough, things will come up. So that's all you really do, and they're all pretty much the same thing. So with the tomatoes, once they come up, I will pick the strongest tomato out of each of these little pots, and I will keep that one growing, and the rest I will just snip off with a small pair of scissors. I don't pull them up because that might disturb the roots of the rest of the plants, but I'll just snip them off. When I get over to the peppers, I find peppers kind of like to grow with a friend. So I usually spread the seeds out just a little bit, and then I try and keep 2 plants in each pot this size. These are, I don't know, 2-inch pots, I think. And the eggplant I will keep to 1 pot because they like a lot more room when they're growing. So I'm just gonna set you down and get the rest of the seeds planted up. And then I'll show you when I have it all set up on the shelf what it looks like, what that setup looks like with the dome and everything on there. Lots of times seeds will come with this extra little package inside. Not sure if you can see that little package that was inside the packet. And that just helps to keep them a little bit fresher. So if you ever come across that and you wonder why, that's all it is. It's just helping to keep the seed nice and fresh for you. There's nothing like fresh vegetables picked straight from your garden, and tomatoes are the one I think almost all gardeners would say is the #1 for just how much better it tastes when you've picked it straight from the garden as opposed to picking it up from the store. They just have a much cleaner, fresher flavor to them. Just can't be beat. I always look forward to those summertime tomatoes. Eat them in everything. So I'm just putting a little bit of that mix on top just to cover them up. And I'm patting it down just to get the air out, but I'm not really pushing it down. I'm not trying to mash the seeds into the soil at all. So the next thing we have here is the jalapenos. Now, these seeds here look kind of funny. I don't know if you can see the seeds down in the package there. I'll show you my hand, how they're a funny color. And that's just, they've put a coating on it, and they say it makes it easier to handle them. It says it's a blend of clay, lime, and perlite. It's non-toxic, it's food grade. And, you know, I've used seeds both ways. I've never really found a difference. I didn't find it difficult to handle the uncoated seeds. But they are small seeds, and when you put the coating on, it makes them just that little bit bigger, and it keeps them from sticking together a little bit, I guess. So it might help for anyone who has a little bit of, you know, dexterity problems. So something to be aware of when you're out shopping for your seeds, that there are different things. You can buy a lot of smaller seeds on what they call a seed tape. And what it is they've basically just taken a really thin, like a paper, and they've wrapped the seeds evenly spaced out just exactly how they need to be between 2 fine pieces of paper. And that's to make it easier for you to get them all spaced out and in the ground better. Now, I personally am not a fan of the seed tape, but some people really like it. I've never tried it indoors, and the things I've tried it for are like lettuces and carrots, which are very fine seeds. And it tends to be quite windy here, and I have trouble getting it laid out, even just a short piece of it, without the wind picking it up and flapping it around. I have trouble getting it all laid out and covered with soil before it's blowing around on me. So now for these guys. So these guys, this is the one I tried last year, and it's a Violetta Lunga di Napoli. I'm not sure. When I went out to find my seed last year, I just really had a hard time for some reason finding what I was looking for the eggplant. So again, with the eggplant, I'm just going to put a few seeds in the middle, and then I will cut them back to one plant once they grow. It's always a good idea to just put a couple extra seeds down, because they're not always all going to germinate. For the cost of seed, it's easier to use a couple of extra than to waste your time having it all planted up and think there's something coming and it never does. This way, at least, you should always get at least one plant. There. So the tomatoes and the eggplants, I just put a few down in the center of the pots, and with the peppers, I spread them out a little bit so that I can space it to 2 once they come up. So I put 4 in each of the peppers, and I put 3 seeds in the tomatoes and the eggplant. What I like to do with the seeds is just give them a nice fine spray. Of course, I already got the mix underneath the seeds nice and wet earlier, like I said. So this is just to dampen that top soil, and so I find with a nice fine mist, you're not going to be getting the seeds jostled around. Whereas if you start pouring water on there, you might wind up with all your seeds shifted around in their pots. There, that's good. Okay, so there's a real glare on that now, but got them all in there, and I've got the dome on top, and they're on top of the heat mat. And that'll just keep them nice and warm and keep some moisture in there until they grow. Once they start to show some growth, I will turn on the light above them. And this little dome is great because it has these little things in the corners, so you can open and close them just to get the humidity adjusted if you need to. If you don't have that, you can always just prop the dome up a little bit too to let some humidity out if it gets too humid. But anyways, that's how I start my warm season veggies. So why don't you go pick up some seeds and give that a try at your house. Happy gardening!